What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokémon Day has come and gone, but we got a new presentation to tell us all about how Darkrai's gonna be in Pokémon Sleep, so that's great. I kid a little bit, but I did legitimately get chills when I saw a Mega Charizard fight a terastallized Dondozo, since that's not supposed to be possible. So Pokémon Champions looks like it might be pretty fun. I've said for a while now that a new stadium-style game would totally work in today's market. Honestly, one of my favorite parts about the whole event was the screens of each generation popping up that stopped at Kalos before talking about the new game, which is why anybody bothered to watch the presentation at all. We just wanted to see what Legends ZA was all about. And I think we can safely say that it is not what we were expecting, at least for most of the fans out there, but I do think that it still looks like a good, enjoyable Pokémon experience. Maybe that was their own fault for thinking that Legends games were inherently tied to a specific art style, but we should have expected that the ancient painting look would better fit the old-timey setting of the Hisui region and wouldn't be universal across all future Legends games. Indeed, Legends ZA looks to have a more similar graphics engine to the Detective Pikachu games. And that's not an insult, those games have a very specific charm to them, and I like that they're bringing this to a wider audience, and can give just a bit more character to some Pokémon if need be. Like, just look at this Gyarados here, it's got so much sass in its expression. I don't really care if the textures maybe aren't the best that they could be. If my Pocket Monster pals can show off their personality more than ever before, that's a step in the right direction to me. And it fits with the theme of this game too, since they specifically stated that Lumiose was going to be remodeled to become more modern to accommodate both people and Pokémon. Which is kind of funny because there are also the wild zones in the city that look to be overrun with nature where the Pokémon live, but hey, we gotta be able to catch wild Pokémon somehow, so I'm not complaining. And speaking of the layout of the city, I will admit that I was a bit skeptical that they could squeeze enough space out of Lumiose City to make sure that it didn't feel too small, even if you did open up all of the buildings. But apparently the answer to that is just to let us walk on all of the roofs across the city as well. A simple change that really opens up the setting, but was never possible the first time we were there. So that alone could warrant revisiting it now. Well, maybe not alone, but there also seems to be some method of making sure that you can't just fall off, so that's pretty interesting. But I gotta say, the biggest upsides have got to be in the battle system. This takes the innovations from Legends Arceus and expands upon them. If the trainer could move around last time, why not have the Pokémon be able to move freely this time? It's the next logical step. Also, recalling Pokémon to retreat at will is one thing, but quickly switching them out to get the advantage in real time is amazing, and really something that we should have seen coming. And now, when you yell, "Dodge it!" like in the anime, our Pokémon can actually do it! That's insane! And it's going to require a new skill set of paying attention and quick reactions while participating in the traditional Pokémon battle screens. Unsticking the Pokémon's feet to the floor is going to unlock the potential of so many Pokémon, and probably make random ones better that we aren't even expecting. And dodging is not the only new mechanic, because now you can also block attacks by intercepting them with your own. So many new levels of crazy strategy could come from just this one game. Although I'm not sure if the trainer still gets damaged here or not, but speaking of getting knocked out, did you see this part of catching a Pokémon that had no health? This is literally a game changer. We've always had to meticulously ensure that if we wanted to capture a Pokémon, we didn't knock it out. But apparently now you don't have to worry about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's really what it looks like, with the health bar going all the way down, and then you can still throw the Pokéball after, with the Flaffy just standing there all dazed. Maybe this is just a singular last-ditch Hail Mary play that gives you a final shot to catch it, and you could still fail, but that's still better than not having the chance at all. I don't know if fully knocking them out would give an increased or decreased catch rate, but either way, this is a much-needed innovation to one of the core mechanics in the Pokémon series, and another reason that ZA looks to be an incredible leap forward. I think the last changes they made to catching were generations ago, once you finally got experience from captures, and you could add freshly caught Pokémon to your party instead of automatically going to the PC. And those changes felt like they always should have been there from the beginning. So I see knockout catching and real-time Pokémon movement in battle as similarly indispensable, and we can't imagine life without them going forward. So that's a big win for this game, even if only half of that actually comes to pass. Of course, we knew that Mega Evolution was back, but it is worth noting that some of the Megas from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were shown off, so we will have all of them available to this point. and maybe possibly a couple of new ones perhaps. But it's fair to say that people were a bit disappointed to see the starter selection. Not only because everyone wanted a lot more French-based Pokemon involved, but to have two of the starters from the same region, they felt like that kinda just made it look like Johto Light now. However, the Johto starters definitely did need the most attention out of all of the options. It is maybe just a little bit odd that they didn't have the restraint to wait one extra game, but it's definitely a right step to give all of the Gen 2 starters something worthwhile. Plus, I know they're more than likely going to get regional forms, but looking at the base stages, it really looks like Emboar would be the only dual type in a starter trio again, which is just crazy. I mean, he can't keep getting away with it, but luckily he won't. What would actually be really funny is if Emboar got a mono-type fire regional form just to get justice after all of these years. But even with new forms, if I had to guess, I doubt there would be too many new Pokemon overall. Hisui only had a handful of them after all, but they did show us what is undoubtedly the main event, Zygarde. We saw the 10% form as well as one of the cells, so will we be collecting them all again like in Alola? Perhaps, but I look forward to seeing Zygarde finally get its due in the region where it was first introduced. Lest we forget how awesome it is that Z version is finally happening after so many years. I mean, what's gonna happen next? Finally getting that gray version we all expected? It's a bit surprising that the main characters they introduced are seemingly standalone, not related to any other, well, with the exception of AZ, of course. I would guess that means this takes place after the events of X and Y, but hey, you never really know. There was also a tag at the end that mentioned promotional matches, which is interesting and could be one of two things. It could be like the Pokemon World Tournament, where lots of previously established trainers would come to battle, whether that be familiar gym leaders, previous rivals, or even just random NPCs that we've never seen fight before, which could be pretty fun to see them all with this art style and updated battle mechanics. But the other possibility is that this is a method of battling other players in real life. Legends Arceus was a great single-player game, but it's undeniable that some fans were let down by not being able to fight other players online, or even their friends locally with the team of Pokemon they've worked so hard to cultivate. So getting the opportunity to branch out slightly into more than just single-player experiences would satisfy a big portion of the fanbase that were hesitant about Legends last time, and they could see much bigger sales as a result. Speaking of, I think we could have guessed this, but they did confirm that Legends ZA will be late in 2025. So number one, that is well after the launch of the Switch 2 and could easily be on both systems. Now, Pokemon has notoriously dragged their feet on moving forward to a new console, like with Black and White 2 or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon lingering despite newer hardware being available. But they might have learned to be a bit bolder as of late. But number two, whether or not it actually makes it onto the Switch 2, this does confirm that they see this game as important enough to be the flagship of this year. And I, for one, am pretty happy with that. Not to say that we won't see any other side games, because those were also announced in the same presentation, but it does make sense to me for this game to be the holiday title for the year, especially when they can pack a lot of content into the game across the many levels of Lumiose City. And really, it's only fair to give this game time to breathe since Arceus was undercut by Gen 9's announcement. So maybe for next year's Pokemon Day stream they can show off Gen 10. And if that is the case, it's a bit odd to think that Gen 9 will have the fewest number of games since Gen 2. Every generation since then has had 4 games or more. But since this is presumably the only game for a while, that gives them time to actually implement all of the best ideas from ZA into the next major titles, like the real-time battle movement, capturing while knocked out, or even exploring in the third dimension, finally getting on the tops of buildings. I mean, yes, Paldea did let us climb a ton and even get onto the roofs of buildings, but there was really nothing there. So actually utilizing the world you place your game in would be really nice. I hope that's a lesson they utilized while making Legends ZA, and make sure that if they're going to stick with the open world, to keep in mind that they need to populate these worlds with actual people and events. And also, interiors to buildings have made a triumphant return here in Lumiose, so that's a huge win already. Maybe you're not as positive on the unexpected features of Legend ZA. Maybe you were looking forward to a more distinctive style instead of the Detective Pikachu-style graphics, or maybe wanted something more like new Pokémon Snap. And I was definitely not expecting it to lean so heavily into the high-tech aesthetics, but I am excited for it, and I do think it's going to be a good game. And that's because a fun time doesn't require immaculate textures or the best frame rates. I mean, just look at the last Legends game. But a great story and immersive atmosphere goes a long way to making an enjoyable experience. Not to mention some sweet new battle mechanics. But what do you think? Am I crazy to read into catching Pokemon with no health? Do you care more about the Pokemon TCG Pocket? Not gonna lie, I am kind of excited about that too, but do you think you're too snobbish to enjoy Legend ZA? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!